Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at the Super Action Statue JoJo's Bizarre Adventure The World figure, which is a very grand name for a figure, which is kind of cool. Plus, this is a really cool figure. In fact, it might be one of my favorite JoJo's figures that I've reviewed so far. I don't know what it is about it. Maybe it's just that he's extra bulky and not quite so skinny as some of the other ones. He's a little less effeminate. But he's really cool looking. I very much like this design, and I have to say the figure backs up what it looks like it's going to do. So that's pretty cool. So let's go ahead and get it off the stand and take a closer look. This guy stands about 6 3/4 inches if you put him straight up and down, about 6 3/4 inches, which makes him about 17 centimeters. He's got a little bit of extra height to him, a little bit of extra size. Most of the JoJo's figures are pretty tall and lanky. This guy's a lot less lanky, so I appreciate that a whole bunch. And if you didn't notice, he's covered with paint. That's a good thing. Look at all of that shading on that yellow. Yellow's a hard thing to shade in the first place, and they did a really good job with that tannish brown. Looks very nice. Very, very good. Then we have that really crisp green to go for all of the hearts and little accent bits like on the thighs and elbows. And there's some brown in there for the elbows and some gold at the wrists. There's some more brown in there at the knees. He's just loaded with lots of nice little details for being a relatively simple design. I think it's pretty good. Let's go ahead and do accessories, and then I'll talk about some other things that I want to mention. So the first thing is we have the two interchangeable heads. We have the one stern head, and then we have the one open mouth head, and they both look fantastic. We have a few different hands. We have the two fist hands that come on him in the package, one finger pointing hand, and then two style pose hands, and they're all very nicely detailed with the gold studs and yellow and gray paint job. Then lastly, we have the Super Action Statue display stand. Not the most accessories in the world, but it's enough, I think. And technically, these two guys on his back are accessories. You have to put them on yourself, but they're just going to be connected to the figure, so I don't think they really count. It's worth noting, and I don't know if this is a universal thing, but they don't quite line up. I think these, since these are separate pieces, they weren't put on perfectly square, so you can see that these two little canister things are a little bit crooked compared to each other. So that's kind of off-putting, but since they're on the back of the figure, it's not that big of a deal, and you might even be able to kind of adjust it a little bit. I helped it out a little bit right there, but not too much. So just be aware of it. No big deal, really. So as I was saying, I wanted to talk about a few other things, and that is the paint job on the JoJo's figures. I don't really mention it in detail sometimes, but they do a fantastic job of painting the faces. The eyes in particular are always really clear and crisp and very nicely done, and this is a good example of that. They had the black outline with the white and then the various colors for the iris and pupil. Very, very nice looking, so I wanted to just point that out. Moving on to the articulation, we have a peg with a hinge for the top of the neck, which lets the head look up and down very well. And of course, you can rotate it around on there. And he can lean a little bit, but most of the leaning is going to happen down here at the ball peg for the neck, which is particularly well done. It functions very nicely, so that's good. Shoulder is just a very traditional ball hinge. Nothing special there, but it goes almost all the way out, probably far enough, and you'll have your full rotation, no problem. Bicep swivel, again, no problem at all. Double jointed elbow, a little bit more limited than most of the JoJo's figures, but that's because his arms are a lot thicker, so it's not something I would really worry about too much. It will technically rotate at either one of the joints, but since he's extra bulky, it's not going to work that much, so I wouldn't really worry about that. By the way, this is all sculpted where it goes from gray to yellow. It's not just painted, it's all sculpted, so that's a very nice detail. For the wrist, we have a traditional ball hinge, so plenty of range there, no problems. Just want to point out again how clean the paint job is, where it transitions from gray to yellow. Very, very impressed with this figure. I have to say, I wasn't expecting to be, but I am. Now, we do have some limitations, though, and that's what we're going to get to right now. His ball peg for his upper torso, which they're usually known for being really good, his is very limited due to the extra bulk. You can't really rotate it too much. It barely leans from side to side, and it barely leans forward and back. You're going to get basically just kind of gesture poses out of it, so that's kind of disappointing. Same thing for down here, this hinge. You only have the back position and the forward position, and those aren't the biggest differences. It's going to be just enough to give him a little bit of attitude, and that's it. And then lastly, you have your swivel down here, which does work very nicely. I didn't point this out. I'm kind of harping on the paint job here, but the paint job on the gray, just the gray itself with the shading, is really nice. You can see it goes from dark gray to light gray for the biceps. There's some over here on the ribs. It's just very aesthetically pleasing. I didn't think about it that much before I started reviewing it, so that's why I'm kind of pointing it out as I go. For the hips, we have the basic ball pegs, which is a little bit limiting. You can bring the legs fairly far forward, surprisingly far for how thick he is, so that's pretty good. You do get to go back a little bit if you want to bring them back some, and then out to the side is going to be pretty limiting. Not so far out to the side, really. In fact, for some reason, he can only go that far on that side and even less on that side, so definitely not the best situation. These little guys are on ball pegs, so they'll move around if you need them to, and then his thighs will rotate around the hips, so that's pretty good. We have the double jointed knees, very similar to the elbow design, except instead of having a ball hinge down here, it's just a hinge, so there's no rotation. You'll have it up here, not down here, but still very good range, and it does look pretty nice too. Be aware if you're not familiar with the Jojo's figures. Well, first of all, check out my other Jojo's reviews. I've reviewed a bunch of them and they're pretty cool figures, but you will know that they are fairly loose and the knees can't often hold the weight of the figure. So you're going to have to be aware of that. You're going to want to use that display stand that they come with. Lastly, we have our ankle ball hinge. Let's see if I can get that on camera. Lastly, we have our ankle ball hinge, which works nicely. You get decent range going forward, decent range going back, and you can rotate it around a little bit to kind of get an ankle rocker. But it's not the best. It's definitely not one of the better ankles we've seen for these guys. It's a little bit limiting. And a toe hinge, which is okay, but hardly necessary and hardly functional. So, it's not a perfect figure, not by any means. But I do think that the aesthetic and the quality of the paint job and the sculpt makes up for any limitations in the articulation. It's a really fun looking figure. It's a fun figure to pose, and I think you guys are going to like it. So, if you do like it, you should probably pick one up. And if you like this video, you should probably give it a thumbs up. That helps me out a whole bunch, so I'd really appreciate that. And if you're not subscribed, you might want to do that. And if you are subscribed, make sure you click that little bell button next to the subscribe button and turn on notifications. That will make sure that YouTube knows that you're subscribed and will let you know when I upload a new video. For some reason, YouTube's been unsubscribing people and not pushing notifications, so you want to have that turned on if you want to watch my videos. And you want to do that because I have new videos up every single day. We talk about movies, TV shows, video games, action figures. We do live streams. I have giveaways coming up. So you want to be involved in all that stuff. So make sure you subscribe. And in the meantime, keep collecting.